Crickets. Crickets, crickets, crickets. Unless we want to be pulled in and allowed to fall into the stinking abyss, we have to resist that. If I can a little bit, just quick comments in the chats, ucy.tv, RLM. We can let that fallen nature take us over, and it will. This is the way it works. Or we can look at various successful examples of what to do, and that's the point, to do. And then we give our best shot to not. And that's is what I just want to keep pointing out. I don't know what else really to point out. If you understood exactly what this means, and give credit to how duped we were, how far behind we really were when we started, you may give up more appreciation to what it's going to take to really get this under control. And that said, I've tried to point out to you also that in the context of the storm upon us, we hear about that silver lining, and I do believe it's there. It's us. It's us doing what it takes to not get overwhelmed. We see the tornado come and step aside it. I mean, that's pretty simple. It goes right on by. And we can figuratively look around and do the same thing around us. That has to do with interacting with people. Understand, this is really what we're dealing with. We're dealing with us. And the crickets is understandable to me, and it's not understandable. It's also a disappointment, but it's also an understanding that, people just appreciate being lazy, apathetic, or they're so overwhelmed, they're just barely hanging on. That's all they can do. And that's a big deal probably for a lot of people anymore. And then when you find out, as I keep suggesting strongly, and even more strongly, that you read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, that Zion is as a manual of your frailty, of your foibles, of parts of that fallen nature that are going to be exploited. It'll give you a great insight into how we've been duped and how they've done it to us and what we take for granted and how that's used against us and the real work it takes and the direction of the work it takes to overcome that before we even get on to doing anything. Which is partly why I understand the crickets. Because even while nothing's happening and we really see it coming down, people are working, and I can only hope that people are, to just not allow this to go where it is planned to go for others to take advantage of you. And it's just not about sticking your head in some sand and thinking that you're not going to have to do it. Well, and in a regard, that's also incorrect. You could stick your head in the sand thinking you're just going to get out, like I talked last week. We're just going to sneak out. Oh, it got too tough too late. Screw that. So it's really a decision that we make. We have examples for, however, we now also see that they're adulterated themselves. It's our job as well to look right through the adulterations that we find. Why I talk about them behind the woodshed, the principles that are being worked against us, the principles we need to overcome that. If we choose to be a better day. If we have, to me, it's almost a foreign statement. But I'll just say it just in what I see out there. For those of you that have sons and daughters in the world and expect their future to be anything, you certainly have to look at what goes on in the world in a way that causes you to respond. Otherwise, those that want to pull us into that stinking abyss, that stench of a future, of whatever nature, will win. It's really simple, that simple. So, as we try to get a more awareness and we understand we've been given wrong information and try to work through it and try to break down all those authorities that are at least external to us and trying to refortify the authority within our own self. Again, I try to bring stuff, just the stuff. The word you're not supposed to say if you're really intelligent, I say stuff. Okay, so that tells you don't listen to me, I'm an idiot. And then that's another secret, the term idiot. I hope you thought about that when I said idiota last week. We're going to, it makes for an interesting avoidance, not evasion, but avoidance. That I told you this I've told you this periodically. All this stuff comes out periodically over time, and I guess I apologize a bit for not having a more formal presentation, book and chapter and verse and lesson plan and all that. But if you listened, I told you we're talking about questioning authority. And we've talked about applications, and we've talked about the construction of the corporate state and the states, literally the states or corporations, and I told you where you can find that, all in statute. I have an opinion, but I try not to convey that too much. And anymore, my opinion is let's just get to it. Let's roll up our sleeves and get to it. That's really the only opinion I have, because if we don't, we're really messed up. Whichever direction the messed up is, that's where we're going. So I hope you've put together in trying to work, again, understanding how to apply your knowledge, not just having it. Having it's zero, nothing. These nada means nothing. Actually working with it and applying it is actually kind of a trick, kind of a neat. You kind of see that, oh, there's more to this. And then how deep that is really a fascination as well. And then how it really starts to change the ball game. But I was talking about the idiota, one who does not know. And in one regard, you don't want to be that idiot to your own self, right? You don't want to be an idiot about you, and that's one of the points. What you certainly don't want to, what you certainly can complain about if someone tries to impose upon something upon you is a foreign authority, and I say foreign to you as well. And then if you can kind of hold there a bit, then you say foreign to you, even to the extent that the society is foreign to you. And this is where we start to get to the point of your own self. As I tell you, you're in international law, you're a nation unto yourself. You're organized. You have organs. So you have as we understand it today, you have at least 3 different capacities in you the extension of you reflecting in the government. The fiction that's out there is out there. It's also in you. And so we have the legislative, we have the laws we make for ourselves, our self-governance, our self-governing. We have the judiciary, the moral capacity to think about how that's going to apply and that it applies. And we have the execution of all that within us to go do. And right now our principles are kind of maybe fallen and maybe clouded, and our thoughts about how we judge that is kind of clouded as well. We're actually mimicking the outward world, and we're not executing our own self-governing power in the proper ways. And I've been trying to show you, without maybe not so adeptly, but mentioning it and giving you the examples nonetheless, that we have to get better there. And once we get better there, things really start to change around. It really almost falls into an automatic condition. And always, and if you're a nation unto yourself, we have this unspoken international law. And remember, unspoken law can be called common law, and I don't mean common to a particular jurisdiction. So it's common amongst all people, and this gives us back up to, this more natural interaction about people. And so if you just start tying this together, it starts to make sense to me, I guess, and so I hope I convey a lot of this to you, even over time, and kind of through examples. That when I said you were an idiota, and then I mentioned the comment of, well, if you're you're living in the United States of America, do you have to follow the laws of France? And I think most everybody would say no. And so let's just move ourselves into that. At some point, we have to be honest with ourselves and humble. You have to just humble ourselves. At some point, we just don't know so much. If we haven't looked around and figured out we don't know anything anyway, well, I don't know what to say about that. But you start learning, you know less and less the more and more you figure out. You figure out you haven't figured out anything. This is really what a good scientist ends up telling you. I was taught this a long time ago in astronomy. They said the more they ask questions, the more answers they get, the more questions got created. Sounded like an endless job to me. I thought that was kind of interesting. And in fact, you start seeing this stuff, these things that are going on. At any rate, you go back to the fact that we have to humble ourselves, and if you were honest, you would have to say, with respect to French law, let alone the language. I mean, not to disparage it. I mean, I'm pretty ignorant. I wish I knew more languages. I find people that have lots of languages that are very linguistic that way are pretty cool. You got an interesting view about all this thing. They have to learn different cultures to learn language. You have to learn about different people. You have to, otherwise you can't really speak the language. But so if I was going to be honest, and I was going to be talking about French law, and someone came to me and said, well, do you know about French law? I said, no, I'm an idiot. And I'd be smart to say I was an idiot, because I hope you pulled this together. When I'm talking about avoidances, I'm going to go back quickly to that fair DUI that I talked about last weekend. That Bago law in application for Dewey stops. And I was telling you this is exactly what you need to do, what I've been telling you to do. Now someone has figured it out. I've also had some people tell me don't think he hasn't heard about this idea through what I've said, that it doesn't show up in the world. The point is it does show up in the world. It showed up just like I told you it was. Last week I explained to you the extension of the use of that. And we're going to get another report I was going to read last week, never got to it, about why it's important to do these things. But you have this position where you say, you avoid by saying, first of all, you don't have a right to trespass and enter. And secondly, I'm going to admit I'm an idiot. I do not know. And you have to understand, too, that most of these charges that you get by the government are not civil. They're criminal. And in criminal, now this bar has dropped really low because no one holds it up. You have to be shown to be knowledgeable and intending to commit the crime, as a wrong, I should say. So this is very important. To understand, at one point, I don't want to be an idiot. I don't want to be known to be an idiot. That's amongst us. I mean, we just don't want to be known to be idiots. But we can remove that by being principled really quickly. And then it's acknowledged that if I'm principled but I don't know, I can agree I'm an idiot to the thing I don't know and maybe didn't need to know. And that's the point. Did you need to know something? Where is it imposed upon you? Did you convert that lack of that detachment by a contract, what we call application, into a foreign jurisdiction agreeing? Did you subvert your own rights? Did you confess away? Did you admit away all that you had to protect you? When you went to admit, if you could admit, well, no, I'm an idiot. In French, in the language alone, but I mean the law. I'm an idiot there. I do not know. Now consider this in context of what I was saying about avoiding a criminal complaint. If you're an idiot, and think about this, idiots and those others without capacity can't be tried and charged. Isn't that true? I think you'll find that is. So, if you can't be charged and you would confess to be an idiot before something that has no proof contrary, you refute the presumption that you could have entered into that particular jurisdiction. And you've also declared in the same breath that you do not know. Now, what in due process in the United States of America, due process is really just notice, isn't it? An opportunity to respond. Notice, opportunity, time, and place, as I keep telling you. It's only 4 things. It reduces down to that. That if I am an idiot, I do not know, it means not only that I did not get notice, which trumps their due process, it also says I'm not capable of knowing. And isn't that a complete defense against a crime? So, before we get too far, and I haven't talked ever too much about this, I don't mind explaining I'm an idiot, if it's true. Now, let me go back to the term idiota, and I hope you picked up on this. If an idiota is a definition, idiota is an A on the end of the word idiot, and it says private man, one who does not know, have I not just declared a jurisdiction and a capacity? Now, a private man, we didn't say person, did we? We didn't say any corporation. We didn't say legal entity. We didn't say association. We didn't say anything's in legal. We said this is a private man. And I told you before that the corporate structure of things and the jurisdiction, it's really just rolls out to jurisdiction. What it requires for a jurisdiction to acquire a power to determine over a personam, some fiction, some thing that's agreed, whether or not it is in there, it's agreed to be in there, in that thing, in the state, they call it now. You just look for any term with in the state, you know that's a foreign state to man. And that I told you that I've given you the example that we proved it. I knew it and I proved it by having a friend of mine go into a traffic case, getting the cop on the stand and asking him, am I a man? And when the cop finally couldn't quite figure it out and finally gave the right answer that he was, my friend was a man. The judge stepped up and said, I can't let that into the record. And he said this. He said, if I let that fact in the record, we couldn't prosecute anybody. So let me go back to the word idiota. When I was telling you, and I hope you picked this together, that if I'm a private man who does not know, when I said that definition, and I do not know, and I'm a private man, then I'm not a legal man, a legal person, I should say, better. See, and this is where you can come in, and you ought to, and you better do this correctly. I'm not giving you anything misuse. You will be caught if you misuse anything, and even if you try to use it right and you use it wrong, you're going to get caught. And this is the narrow path they talk to us about running. You have to walk and run that narrow path, and don't let it toe off that bright line. They'll chomp it off like anything, like a shark in the ocean. You're swimming on your board, you leave a leg off, and there's a shark, he'll eat it. That's how this works. That much. You can surf that wave as long as you can surf that wave. Don't fall in. But you walk that narrow path, and so you claim, and you better not show any knowledge about their system when you're saying you're an idiot to it. But you, by that word, by that declaration, you can, and I'm not saying this will work for you. I'm saying this is how the words work. You claim to be an idiot in a place you had no right to be, or were found in a place that you accidented into, or there's no other evidence that you've been put into a particular jurisdiction that by their own statement requires special acts to get in there. And by the term and by admission of idiota, a private man, one who does not know, you're saying you cannot know, you did not know, and you're not of the status to know. And in the declaration, you also call yourself something outside of almost all jurisdictions that I understand that are legal. Now, I'm not saying you go on a piece of paper and say I'm an idiot that way, but you might. I'm giving you some information. You have to go work this out. I can't discuss every possibility of how this works and what's going to fly in your face right after you do this. You have to anticipate that, and you're going to have to be able to weather that on your feet. Talking about thinking on your feet. You're going to have the principles that back all this up, because they're going to come at you to try and prove you're not worthy to be the man you claim you are, to be the idiota you claim you are. And so this is actually pretty big deal here that I'm talking about, that folds into some of these concepts. And believe me, I've jumped into their jurisdictions in order to try to protect ourselves. Myself or friends, and we've tried to do all this, and we know they have the ultimate conversation. They're in the seated decision, and they can decide that, like we found. The example is that the judge just wouldn't take the evidence, even though it was right there. Now, we could, I guess, have gone on and on and on, going after that judge. Why? Again, that was a lesson thing, a proof. I wasn't there to prove, to go after anybody. I was there to prove a point of what the laws are about, and we got the proof. At that point now, you're in a different style battle, aren't you? If you're going to stand in a situation where someone in the seat of decision is going to deny the reality, do you want to maintain a battle there where they maintain that decision? No. So you have to really think up on your feet and go and plan your strategies and work this out. I wanted to bring this to you because it's coming now of knowledge. I've been talking about it. It's now coming. There's more and more things coming out. This someone's use of what I call the Bagel law is showing me, if not my listeners, and if not the people that listen to what my listeners tell other people, and the people that I look around and listen to that are listening and doing and reading and researching, if not even they're doing it. This gentleman in Florida has come onto the Bagel law that I've been espousing for a long time. And I don't know what his book's about. He has a book to sell. I don't know how far he goes in explaining it beyond using that. I told you last week of why you use that, how if they negate that. But this is all about showing, and here's the problem. Before I go on, it flashed in my mind, that little license. That little license he had in the bag, that was an application into the jurisdiction, and you signed with your name. And this is where you all have to do another research, but for rescission. But notwithstanding that, I won't get you there. You have already agreed to be subject to being in the state when you signed for that license. And that's what I was talking to you. The hesitation I would have, be careful if you don't have that. You're going to have a slightly different argument. And I would say go to the road law that gives you the right to be on the road, not the right to drive, not the right to travel, but the right to use the road without restriction. So there's you really have to think about this, but there's ways to get at these guys. And the main thing that was intriguing to me was that this is a way to really ball them up. I mean, this is a way to protect yourself too. You don't give them anything on this fair Dewey paperwork. You throw that bag outside the window. It has all the information that they can get, and they better, and then it's on them. And if you can get them, that's the bag of law that you present in court, and you can say, why didn't you recognize this? When you get them all the questions about what you showed them, and you get it on the record. If they ever do go beyond and beat you up, you've got these guys for being outside their jurisdiction. And so it's a planned method. And what are we talking about here? Is this your freedom? Yeah, it's the freedom of constraint you throw yourself into that you're going to have to live by. It's not being free. And so we are told we have to fight for our freedom. So that's not being free either. So this whole nonsense about being free is nonsense. I mean, it's self-evident, right? Because there's somebody out there that wants your stuff. And that was you. As we can now we find out, as I've been talking many years, but now more and more people are finding out. We are being claimed by somebody, and so you have to know how to refute that, how to bring the flip, if you will, flip the burden back over. And it's not that hard. And I'm not saying, again, these are not, what I tell you here is not the end all be all. You have to put it in context of the situation you're in. You may need more than what I say, but in essence, you flip it over by asserting a fraud being entered into the record to have trespassed you to get you in there to defend yourself. And that flips the burden. The declaration of fraud with even possibly a proof of how, if you can do that. In other words, if you learn how to prove a negative, which is kind of interesting, all of it by itself. Everyone said you can't prove a negative, but I think we figured out how. But in fact, it's really not proving the negative because it's all an inverted system, but it looks like it's proving a negative. When you go to the Secretary of State and you say, hey, I've just given a citation with this capitalized name, and let's not get into all that. I told you that's just a debtor. Okay, that's a legal entity debtor is all that means. And so, and it's in the state, and that state's a bankrupt state. We know that because of the use of the styles that they're using. And I say you go back to the Secretary of State, and I said, listen, I just got a citation from one of the state officers, and this entity is in the state. I want a record. I want to see all the evidence of the record of the existence of this name in your state. And they typically, and I would say before that you do that, look around and see if there's anybody use the name that's on that for a business, because that'll be a shocker to you. If someone else didn't use that name that's on that ticket that looks like yours as a corporation, that'll be a shocker. But at any rate, most of the time it doesn't come up that way. And so you get the letter back from the Secretary of State says, no, that entity doesn't exist in the state. That name doesn't exist in the state. And it's all in caps. So you have direct refutation to bring if your assertion of a fraud against the imposition of fraud on the document that got you into the court isn't refuted right there, you still assert it. If you don't have to bring it in, you can assert that later. The point is you attack the complaint, the complaint, because it's not a complaint, but a complaint. It's not a claim; it's a complaint. So you tell them, listen, this complainant, this peace officer, so-called, this revenuer, made a fraud on this document. And here's the proof. Prove it a negative. It doesn't exist. That entity that they've named doesn't exist. That's another way to show you're not in a state as well. But again, don't take these as silver bullets. Because as I just told you, I'm giving you, and this is why I gave you that example first a long time ago and repeated it. We've been before courts where the judges are absolutely corrupt and they will actually not look at evidence that is reality in order to continue their crime. There's organized criminal syndicate. So this is, be careful. I just have to caution you, be careful on what I'm saying. It's not that it's not right. It's that you're walking into a condition where they'll be found out understand, if they come against you, they found out that they have to make a decision that they've come against you wrongly. They're all liable. So understand this, the fine line you're walking, how powerful it is. All of a sudden, you slip right off the edge there. They're actually on that edge, but you got you thinking that it's on. So let me go through a bit here. The fair duty bagel law thing was really great. I thought the guy applied it for that context very well. It's exactly what I told you about bringing the law for the area you're going to be in. I predicted this years ago. You're going to have to travel with these things. Why? Because this lethal force thing, this execution squad, if you don't have something to take that low mentality, psychologically depraved individual and cause him to question quickly, he might shoot you. This is the only ammunition that you have, actually, that can stop that, is a word in your mouth and the right word, all right? So you don't tell him you're an idiot in the field. What I'm saying is that comes in the court. When you put the bag of law out there, you're actually constraining his authority. And if you notice, the Constitution, in that fair duty, he stated the first, three rights in the Constitution. That's the constitutional authority. He had to not deal with them unless he was protected by counsel. And then the second step was to explain to the whoever it was, in this case these officers, these revenuers, these plunderers on the side of the road, interfering with everybody's people who had right to travel, who even the ones that didn't understand that in ignorance, they thought they had to get a permission to do business on the highway to travel, to traffic. Notwithstanding all that, he shows those using the state statutes as a limitation on their authority. I hope you picked that up. And so this is when I'm talking. I mean, I know I say stuff, and I know there's a ton to discuss about it. I just don't have the time. I hope earnestly you go back in and look at this and start having, I'm saying this right now to delineate these things. I hope when you went and looked at, you just didn't look through the website and bail off, that you actually started thinking about what I was saying in context with what you were looking at. In other words, I'm saying if you go to the Blogcaster page a couple hours after after the broadcast when I post it, and you have the links, you can listen to the tape and you can see what I'm talking about, and then you can let your mind really work on what I'm saying. That you can put some powerful stuff together. I try to do a little bit today because it's really more to a really focused point that, it sounds funny, you don't want to be an idiot, but in fact we might be. And we have to really be truthful about that. So there might be places we would admit to it. And I'm suggesting to you, and I wouldn't say that this would work in every case, but it certainly sets the record for it, that if I declare to myself to be an idiota, which I don't do as a statement, I do it in other ways when I'm running paper through, and you only do it where you need to. You have to know your own law. In other words, we didn't call ourselves necessarily idiota or to make the facts to create such when we advanced our property protection suit. You have to know about your law there. You can't say you're an idiot there, can you? So this is all context specific. But you come in on a defensive side and you say, listen, I'm an idiot. First of all, they committed fraud. Secondly, I'm an idiot. So that's a secondary proof that he's committed a fraud. He's claiming I have joinder with the state by something. Well, if you're someone with an application that's got evidence of your license is not evidence of the license. It's license of the application in the state. That's what it is. It's evidence of an application. That's what your driver's license is. Hope you figured that one out. It's about that application, about coming into the state. So if you say you're an idiota while you have an application out and they can find that, you've just perjured yourself if they want to go that way. So this is very, very important to understand. When you get down to land law, it shows you about titles, and that kind of goes along with linkages of contracts. And you can see the hierarchy and the servitudes and obligations and duties of your entire life reduced down to how property law works. It's all about property. Those contracts are interests, relative interests, not actual property. And so you just put these things in order. But so last week I talked about being an idiota, and we laugh. I don't want to be an idiota, but I'm telling you, we are at some point, someplace in the world. We are. We're just an idiot about something. We're private men and women, obviously. In other words, you see the failure. It's always going. The women are always viewed through the status of a man. There's just no way to get around this, and I don't know what to tell you about that. It's just the way it's worked for about ever I've looked at things. Regarding what might be considered laws. So we speak man as in man in the world, and hopefully not of it, but in it, or whatever that is. That statement, we're not supposed to be. I don't remember that. It's not my point today. We are men. We're private men, whether we're man or woman. We're in particular jurisdictional power structures. We may be complete idiots, and we would be wise to say so, instead of being complete idiots and saying otherwise. And so what I've learned as we come through, I come in and I'd argue I don't argue, I just present the fact, knowing full well they'll deny all of it, because we've got the proof now that a judge will just deny the fact. They deny reality. That we will come in and we will talk like we're an idiot. But we won't talk like an idiot. We point out that we have eventually with the facts, we have no capacity to know, we didn't know, and we're not of the status to know. And, okay, so I hope you maybe go back and look at it, because this is a very important point here, with regard to that fair Dewey concept, actually coming out with applying a law that applies your rights. At the same time, it applies the restriction and limitation, notwithstanding there was an evidence of an application in the bag. Within the context of that was the limitation enough to avoid a more problematic interaction, wasn't it? So, very important. I want to talk a little more about that in context with the definitions, the words I said, and that we can use use these things, and you'd be best to use, when you're an idiot, you better tell people that, and then know what that means, actually. That you're a private status, separate from the jurisdiction that's inquiring. Then you get to ask them, if I'm a private man and an idiot, what are you asking for? Now that's on their authority tab. So it's a whole new insight if you start really looking at what this is and stop getting so wild on the silver bullet stuff. Stop thinking UCC has anything to do with it. Although, I mean, we can see contracts in there, but that's not what you haven't heard me talk about. You don't hear me talk about any of these things, do you? I don't talk about constitutions. I don't talk about the UCC. I don't talk about admiralty. I could care less about the flag. I mean, I do talk about international law, but it's more in an obscure type of sense. But if you go apply it, you start seeing that, oh, this all does kind of work really here. And we just don't talk about it. We just apply it. Remember? It's not what you know. It's what you apply, what you do. I can't stress this enough. And you can do wrong even though you know right, correct? I mean, this is, there's no guarantees here. And then you're up against someone who will not just hand you the keys to the kingdom. Remember that if you don't, those of you that read through and try to find little nuggets of truth, the Bible had Luke, 11:52? They essentially will hide the key of knowledge, and they'll hinder anybody who tries to enter. If you think you know, they'll hinder. If you do know, they'll hinder that. It's right there written if you just want to agree that it's there to read. And when you look around and apply that to the world, it's been in the world forever. This whole a special class of people that put themselves in an apparent authority, and no one says boo about it. And they don't recognize that when the truth is denied, they don't recognize that to see that's an ongoing felony now. And arrest it. And now we're so far down in a way that the system will now support itself in its plunder. Which is, again, we were talking a little bit quickly. I can't keep track while I'm prepping the broadcast to be in the chats too much to talk to depth. Not that that's a big, we can do that too much in a few characters, but that was another thing that popped out about in the context of what we're saying here. I mean, there's just certain things that are going to be reality, and we're either going to stand up against it, and we're going to find the more proper ways to continue to battle it continuously and call it out. If nothing else, the example is we call it out. And I said it's going to take, now we're so deep behind the, the 8 ball, so to speak, or it's coming bearing down on us so close if we're going to go the other way. We really still don't even have the knowledge to just step aside of it. And that's what an avoidance is. An avoidance is just stepping aside of something and saying, hey, I'm over here, not where you thought I was. So fulfilling the continuing, as I told you, I wish, when I was fighting traffic tickets, when that was the thing to do, I realized I wish that, a lot more people just bought their traffic tickets. And I'm not even talking about the level of knowledge and application. I've been talking here just in the last, 30 minutes now. I'm even just going right through down the books and just using set aside, they're actually pre-plea remedies and avoidance inside the statutes that they don't talk about, but the pre-plea remedies alone, that's, my first case was all about that. In fact, I ended it before we went to trial. I had all the proof that they needed at the time. That's when that's where my rose-colored glasses were slapped, and I said, if you're going to do this, I'm going to make you pay. I'm going to be the porcupine. You're not going to do this to me no more. I don't have the power to shoot you all down and stop this nonsense under color of authority. Now, I wouldn't use those words 30 years ago, but I can use them now. I said, so my response was to go after the city that had the cops, that did the violation, and go after the cop and go after the system and do everything in my power to make it as dirty a fight as I possibly can, knowing at all times I was going to win. Why? Because I had all the stuff that I needed under the statutes to prove it if we went to trial. And that's that. By the very end, by the day I finally had been fighting it for 9 months. My very first traffic ticket that I learned how to fight. And it was really just filing the right papers at the right time. And I told you about how I got the cop to have to come into my court, my motions twice a week, and he worked on the swing shift. He lost a lot of sleep. He told me that later. 3 months after this was all done, I met him another place. And it was a party I was at. He didn't want to have anything to do. It was a party and I wasn't into it, but the people there they were into karaoke, and so they had some music playing loud, and they were singing, and the cops were called because of excessive noise, and that was it. And I walked out of the backyard, didn't know they were there. There were cops all over the place. I walked out of the backyard, and the cop that I dealt with for 8 months looked at me and said, "You know him?" He goes, "Yeah, he's at the party." He goes, and I walked into into the house, and he told my friend, he goes, "That guy cost me more sleep and overtime than anybody I have ever met. I don't want anything to do with that." And all those cops left. And so it was a small victory because the violation, was just karaoke. They were asked to turn it down. They did, and it wasn't a big deal. The point was, I didn't know it at the time. It was happening. To me, it was a big battle. To me, I didn't, I was stressed out. I mean, first time ticket, these guys were trying to kill me. And then I was getting denials by the city that they were stalking me. I had proof that they were tracking me down now, trying to figure out something new they were going to put on me. I figured it all out. Started sending my letters. That was my record ahead of the time so that if anything happened, I had a protection. Are you all doing this, folks? I mean, this is what you have to do. This is how you know you live in a penal colony, essentially. You're not really free. You have to set your records up. I learned this early on. So we get to the point to the day. I've got all my proof. I know I'm going to win this thing if we go to trial anyway. But I'm prolonging it for my case for 9 months, having that cop going all the time. The last day I decide, okay, I've had enough cat and mousing. I'm done with it. Today I'll let them know, let the judge know this is no case. Before that, I had the prosecutor on the stand. And I grilled him for 20 minutes. Did I get him? No, but it doesn't matter. I saw the bead of sweat roll over his brow. He didn't want to be there. And at the very end, I gave him the proof that they weren't going to have a case. And I said, I'm done with this. And so I want to offer this into evidence to show that this officer didn't do the law, didn't care to do the law, and the state has disregarded the law the whole time. And boy, when that judge saw that, he got really upset. And they fired up all over the judge, the prosecuting attorney, and the cop for sure. So, the point is I balled that court up for 8 months, caused a bunch of pain on these people. Just by filing pieces of paper and paying attention, doing what I was supposed to do and on point. So, here comes, I've been telling you to do this. I wish when I saw that, I said, I wish 1,000 people a week that got tickets would just do this. They would muck that system up so bad that they would have to stop writing tickets. I mean, they'd be so involved with being in court that they couldn't have to stop. They wouldn't just be out in the field to stop. We'd have them all locked up in their little system. So now you got a handful, 1,000 people a week now blocking the system up. Pretty simple. And no one's at risk at this point. You've already got your harm. The ticket's written. So now what? Why aren't we doing this? Is my thought a long time ago. Well, it takes almost 30 years, and here it comes. An ex-police sergeant tells how and why you should fight all speeding fines. A story from the Free Thought or report. Indiscriminate revenue gathering? It's absolutely disgusting. The government and the police force need to hang their heads in shame. There's a sergeant named Stan. He was on a police force for 14 years, and he'll go through and tell you why you should fight every traffic ticket. And essentially he says the same thing. He's fed up with the revenue enhancement. I told you that alone, in the Lieber Code, Article 10 tells you you're under martial rule. Military rule, martial law. They don't have to declare it. You just look around and see what exists, and if that matches what you see in the Lieber Code, that's enough. And revenue enhancement, which the revenue supports supports the jurisdiction, the police jurisdiction, is by definition martial law. So he goes through some basic steps. Do not accept alleged offenses. There are numerous valid reasons to dispute every single alleged offense. Often the charges are incorrect, or the evidence is illegal or incorrectly gathered. And wow, folks, that's just on the one side. And then I know a whole other language about using the use of the road stuff. This thing was I figured out I could extend my traffic case for years. I just got tired. Literally, it was the cat and mouse, and I knew the mouse was dead before I got going. Was the other point. But I mucked up their system, and I realized that we could muck up that system pretty easily, just on traffic tickets. That I'm into now because they're going to oppress you if you don't. You agree to all this if you don't fight them. You slip into their jurisdiction because you don't fight them, and you give them the easy out, and they'll come after you again later. I think they actually look around and they kind of pick you out every so many years. They'll pick you out again. That's what I started to see. There's a pattern in how you get tickets, and they keep doing it because you don't fight it. And I have the direct evidence that when you do fight it and you put them through some pain, you take money out of their pocket, you take sleep out of their bed. They will remember that. You better bet they better remember that, and they just don't mess with you. And then it's not being that gives you license to be a criminal, because I'm not a criminal, but they are in a system that wants to go after you. So he says, fight every alleged offense. There's a ton of ways to fight these things. You don't have to get all free man on the land stuff. I argue, don't do that. It's more like what we call code pleading. Go ahead and use those codes. Those codes are what guide that system. 2, challenge it. Tell them you're going to defend the matter. Make them earn every miserable $150 to $200. Exactly. That's what I was saying. See, 30 years from when I was agreeing with this object, now it finally comes out by a cop. If you don't believe me, believe this cop. 3, if a court date is ever set and it does not suit you, do not accept it. Ask for a delay to a time and place that suits you. Absolutely. I did that and more. You bring motion. You learn how to bring motions in, and that cop has to come and answer with it. Again, they have to be relevant to your case, so you got to figure out what those are. Number 5, if it ever actually gets to court, which is unlikely if anyone does this, and if you are unwell that day, ring the court morning and tell them you cannot make it as you are sick. The camera operator, the police prosecutor will already be at the court, and you will be greatly inconvenienced by having to come back another day. The whole time this is going on, the amount of paperwork involved with the traffic camera office is huge. Huge. More than that, the clerks and everything. It's just a mess. Now, I'm going to tell you, you better have something that it can verify that you're sick, because they might come to your house. They'll send a cop to your house. So be careful on that one. The point is, you can extend. It's easy to extend trials if you know what to pay attention to. The court system is then placed under such a massive load. Number 6, that the people who wanted their day in court that is simply will not be able to cope unless they open up about another 50 magistrate courts. Exactly. Costs the system money. Costs them more money and time than they're getting from you. This is, again, on point. What I've told you forever on what you do. And this happens even in your other case, any other, not just traffic, in every other prosecution. And you don't let an attorney come in because then you're deemed incapacitated without having the idiota status. You're a ward of that court then, and the officer, which is the attorney, who they claim to be independent of the system, was not, because they're, in some states, the bar is made a state agency. So you figure that one out if you don't think you're in administrative rules here. And you could become you can become incapacitated without the idiota status. They'll do what they want to do, and they won't argue any rights outside the system. That's why you lose. It's simple how that works. Now, you set it up, as I've learned now since, and it come pretty quickly when I saw that then, and so I started to set up that way, just in case I was going to press on. You set up for your appeal. You don't set up you set up to win the trial or the case, but you set up for errors at the trial so that you have an appeal. So he's advocating going on an appeal here. So this is, again, what I found myself 30 years ago. This officer is coming today to tell you. Tell everyone you know to challenge all alleged offenses. The entire system will crash within a few weeks. That to me, that's still conjecture. I said it. He said it. It is conjecture, but it's hard when you look at this how that wouldn't be the case. And this is why I say we have power in our hands if we would just start doing something about it. And this could go any kind of citation that you get that they have the advantage. You just cause them a bunch of trouble. In number 8 here, he says, please pass it on and always remember that you are innocent until proven guilty and that there is a very high probability that evidence used against you is wrong. See, that's another thing. There's your evidentiary appeal things, right? So got to know the rules of evidence, and they're pretty simple. You'll find out there's quite a few. I don't remember what the number is anymore. There's 30 or 40 of them, but I found I use about 7. 7 is about enough to go to when you go to trial. The few times I've been to trial, a handful of times I've been to trial, I've used about 7. It reduces down to about 7, and they can be used pretty adeptly, pretty easily and pretty adeptly. So you learn those, and they're usually in the statutes as well, usually in the civil rules of procedure or related to that. And so you attack the evidence because evidence is the whole thing. Now he says you're innocent until proven guilty. That's not really the truth, because you've confessed that you're not innocent of being amenable to the jurisdiction when you get your applications, when you fill out and sign into the state. See, so be careful on that. They don't deem you innocent. They deem you not guilty. And this is a big deal. They deal with you as someone who's still subject and one who's presumed to be subject, but you're just not guilty. They haven't found you guilty yet. And so the innocence is a whole different thing. You need to find that out. They will not let you make a plea of innocence. And that should shock most people. The legal system lets you only do 3 things when you go to appear, if you appear. And I'm saying you don't want to appear. You do all this other stuff before you make your plea in avoiding the jurisdiction. That's what you have your right to. And as soon as you make a plea of one of these pleas, you waive everything, every defense you had as an avoidance, you waive. And then you have to be sharp enough to bring some of them back as a motions to dismiss. There's a line drawn there. As soon as you plead, you admit the jurisdiction and all the defects prior are admitted as waived. So the plea is a very important point that they don't really make a big deal about, that your set-asides tell you there's a real big deal for the sufficiency of the complaint to get you into the court. So there's a little bit more here to say, but you're not innocent. You're not innocent of that jurisdiction. You are subject and you're guilty to have to go submit yourself to it because you filled out an application. When you don't have one, now you've got the felonies. Now you've got them outside their authority, and then you have to press it a little different. The problem is, right now, we're so far down the bad road that they're in the seat of decision there as well. So, I think enough here. As you tie this together, I've given you the same advice. Now it comes out of a cop. You don't believe me. This is what this guy's saying. I'd like to still see it. For those people that are into getting tickets, you have this in your advantage. I mean, this is sitting there to really muck them up. I'm just going to tell you, it just mucks them up bad. And at that point, you walk in with a smile on your face, really. You're good. Otherwise you're going to be paying money or whatever, and then if you don't fight it, I'll just let them give them the money. It's cheaper that way. Well, is it when they hit you again another year and a half, or if you're real lucky, they hit you in 3 months or 2 years, and over and over, and the fines keep going up, and the interference keeps coming on you. And then they decided that now you're just a target. This is what I had to stop initially. They started to. As soon as I came into town, don't ask me how they figured I was coming into town. I didn't even live in the same town. I just came in for supplies. They knew I was there, and I found them tracking me. And I said, well, this isn't going to work. They keep tracking me. They're just going to looking for something to stop me on. They want to now, because I was given so much trouble, they wanted to start building up the citations. I wasn't going to let that happen. So I made a record of their harassment. And I finally got a letter back from the city. They were trying to avoid it, and they said, "Oh, well, whatever you think is going on, you will not see any evidence of it henceforth." And I didn't. So they couched their letter so they wouldn't admit that they were doing the wrong, but they stopped it. They knew what they were doing. I caught them. They stopped. And so what that did is it freed me from being. It didn't free me from looking over my shoulder, but what it freed, because that could happen happenstance, but it freed me from the concerted effort to come after me to try and give me more. And this is what they start doing. Again, it's a martial law, and they will go around and do what they need to do to supply their system and secure it as they see fit. And there's nothing you can do to stop that part except make records, which is why I'm so absolutely critical of you doing that. So another thing that ties into this, and you can use it, I say grab these links up, get these documents, and use them. When I said you're an idiota, you're a private man, one who does not know. Now, that might be private man and one who does not know what. The legal system is probably what they're talking about. It's a legal dictionary I'm giving you a dictionary out of. So it's one who does not know, a private man, one who does not know. You're not a legal person. You're a private man or woman. But so what? Are you lawless? No, we are something. And the government that we have is us. And so we have, I told you we have the same offices, departments in us as our government does, that we've set up as a mirror for us. And so in a way you can't even deny that. You can deny having the structure, but you better really understand that everyone's going to have to be really, really tight on their self-governance, if I can use that word now. But self-government better be strong in international law, and it's not. That's another one of our problems. So, but you have this self-government. What do we rely on but every day? Every day. Every second, we're in a self-governing condition. And so I don't know if you remember, they were going to shut down the government here, not just recently, but the time before. And then no one cared. And so they had to come back in real quick and fund the government because no one cared. You know, it was like the concept about when the cops went away, what difference did it make? And they found it made no difference, so everyone was cool with that. Well, that was what was going to happen when we were talked about that behind Woodshed. But Obama came back when he fired the government back up because the Congress allowed the money, and where the money was going to go. Now he was going to execute on the appropriations. He made an interesting statement, and I want to remind you of it because it speaks right to this idiota, one who does not know. But it's not that you're an idiota in yourself. You're not an idiot to yourself. Well, you could be, but most of you probably aren't. And I hope you know how to identify that. Otherwise, you might have just decided that you're not, or that you are, and not an idiota, but a really one who doesn't have capacity. He made a very interesting comment, and he admitted to something. And I'll have the link later. It was the speech he made right after he started the government. He said this: "That's not." Well, let me set it up for you. So let's work together to make government work better, instead of treating it like an enemy or purposely making it work worse. That's not what the founders of this nation envisioned when they gave us the gift of self-government. Now, they didn't give us squat about self-government. What it was acknowledged in an international document was that it existed. This unqualified one, the one as qualified one as he is, Obama, he admitted that was one of the things that was antecedent the establishment of the external government to us, which was self-government. Now, if you're a private man, an idiota, one who does not know, but you have self-government, do they have the right to trespass that? Do they have a right to bring their government over and oppress your government? And isn't your government first? I'm not talking about we the people. I'm talking about your power, individually, independent, to self-government. What authority do they have in any document that says they can oppress your self-government as a private man, one who does not know their system? I'm pausing here. I want you to think about that. We have the power of discussion. We have the word in our mouth right here in these things. Here's evidence. The unqualified one, the one who's the chief, the commander-in-chief of the military in this military prison we live in, over every bit of it, and as unqualified as he is, has just acknowledged that everyone else ought to follow, unless they're another criminal, working against the government itself, working against their commander-in-chief, that there is a gift that was given to us by the founders, which I'll tell you, that's impossible. We either have it and it was never acknowledged, or we never had it. So we've had it. It wasn't no gift, not from the founders. Of self-government. So I may be an idiot, but I don't relinquish my self-government. And that self-government is foreign to the legal system. That's why it's called a private man. Not a free man on the land, none of that stuff. I'm an idiota at some point. But I'm not an idiota to within my own self-governing state, which is me. So, the unqualified one recognized it. That's good enough for me. I would copy this out. As I tell you, in the bag of law, I'd have this little thing. I'd have highlighted this situation. I said, okay, whoever comes against me, where is the law that says you can defeat and oppress my self-government? And I think you start understanding this, and you start becoming on a very powerful journey to expose before the fact, at the point of first contact, how you are distinct, different, separate, independent of that legal system. That begins your journey. Because when they say that they don't have that, they can't show it. Now you've shown that they are now really just a highwayman. Actually, as Lysander Spooner says, worse than a highwayman. On the highway. Lysander, what a great mind in that regard. I'll tell you, I'll give you something here, folks. I told you this before, I'll say it again, because Lysander Spooner, I don't know what to call that guy, but except that he was I would have to put him in one of the pivotal mentors that I had. He was the one that, when I read his stuff, he finally broke the final link in my belief system that there was an authority that was government that had a say more than me. He shredded that concept in just reading his stuff. He gave me permission to go ahead and do that. If I don't know more about the guy, I don't know, just read we just read what we read about him. But what an awareness that gentleman had, even though he learned law the hard way and he was a lawyer, but fought the legal system, so-called, the law system, to adopt outsiders, if you will, to the system itself. And boy, what a refreshing mind he brought. Lysander Spooner for me was one of my mentors to literally break the last, and I think it was the last link. After I read his stuff, in particular, it's no treason, Constitution, no authority. That just completely, I felt literally freed from any construct about the system. And that's a whole nother thought process that goes on right after that. But here at Obama, and you have proof now, you can print this out. It's a speech I get it off the White House Gov. So this is evidence. You put in published print, this is evidence, and you say, what is your authority to oppress my self-government? Essentially, you could claim, and I'm not saying to claim, unless you understand this more, you could claim to be a foreign state, foreign to the state that's oppressing you, and moving in and trying to invade you and call you to be a trafficker, a privateer trafficker, under international law, essentially, contrary to the war effort of the state that's oppressing you. So not getting too lost in that and not telling them, you don't ever tell them that. That's just how you think about it. The unqualified one, if you needed license, agrees that you at least, if you even understand this much, that you were given a gift of self-government. I'm asking you to now step into that. Where's the response? When are you going to step up to the responsibility of that? And you can't do that by not doing anything. This is what I keep telling you about, the do. Pretty fascinating truths here. Truisms, not that I'm saying them, just that there's just a certain nature of things. And this is what we're talking about, the law of nature. This is what we're talking about, essentially. And acknowledged by these people that appear to have this apparent authority. He certainly doesn't have the authority over self-government. He's saying that was the gift to us, but I don't care even if it was from the founders. He's saying that government can't touch that. Essentially, he's reflecting back, your self-government didn't recognize our government and didn't care that we weren't going to be around after a while. And they, oh wow, we're running the wrong direction, we're leading a parade that's going in the wrong direction. We have to run really quick through the ranks, get in front again with wave our flag. And this is what all that speech was. But he acknowledged a very important power that I think most people looked right on back through. I want to bring it back to your attention. So we talk about asserting your jurisdiction, your authority, your power, and that an idiota, though it sounds kind of funny that I want to claim to be an idiot, but in the capacity of addressing another foreign power, a foreign authority, and I say they have power because they can shoot you, they can execute you, so they got a power, don't deny that. But in face of that, what about, where does it say that they can trounce your self-government unilaterally? And so you don't have self-government. Your obligations are in your self-government to honor your own words. So when you signed a contract, it's a contract, but it's a mutual contract that you've signed and they accepted. What they're called applications. When you sign that, you've given over part of that to that part that you've given over to agree to that state's laws. So this is why applications are really important not to sign unless you know what you're doing, and then you have to accept the responsibility. That they're going to be criminals in face of the failure to produce the documents they say you have to have. Now that's a whole other discussion. So now you have your self-government step up, and you better be able to be, act like a man now. Don't act like a person, if I can say it that way. Moving on here, because again, time ticks. Wow. Anyway, important stuff in the last hour, I can just tell you. I know it didn't come out like a lesson, but important ideas here to really understand, not just spout and rewrite and copy down and, I found the answer. No, these are very core foundational understandings that need more thought and more application. Find something to apply the knowledge to that I'm telling you. Go read about it. Go find the sources you need to find. Don't look at anybody's opinion. Look at primary sources here. If you don't do that, you're going to walk off the trail. You're going to hang a toe off the board, and that shark's going to chew that, munch that part off. If not, drag you off the board. So this is the other thing. The doing is not so easy. You're in a war. Freedom isn't free. Being free isn't free. We're supposed to be vigilant against every attack. We weren't really told that may be the government itself. And I'm telling you, it's the government itself. It's those that propose to be an authority under color of the government, actually. And when you phrase it that way, you've got a felony immediately. If you don't, then you think that there's this entity, this fiction, this vessel that it actually exists. So moving back on, and just to come up through the Twitter, and thank you to Gary L. on this one that came up this morning. Remember I was telling you, kind of intimating there was a process of making water, ancient waters, and went through all the science that's available to show us that the scientists don't know what's going on, yet they know the processes are there. They don't connect the dots. So I was really pressed. I want to tell you that story last week. I said, I've got to get this report out, tie this together, even as loosely as I did, talking about where water comes from or where it might come from. Again, it's just thought to me, conjecture as well. But this morning, I guess we have discovered from actually last June, as I'm looking at the date here, massive ocean. And I remember a little bit about this, but what I wanted to point out is something about this. Is I talked to you about real briefly about the creation of water, and I talked to you not in how to explain it. I said. When I mentioned radiologic decomposition, I said, well, there's a thing that they're not talking about here, which I would talk about, say it was fusion, but it's not actually. It's more of a radiologic catalyst for the creation of things, so the fusion of molecules. It's not fusion as we understand it. In other words, when it happens and you have radioactive conditions going on, which adds the energy to the molecular structure, you have no outward radiation because it's all being used and to some zero the equation of the changing of molecules and the reorganization into new ones. That I just kind of touched on. Well, here discovered by Gary L. from last June now, massive ocean discovered toward Earth's core. A reservoir of water 3 times the volume of all the oceans has been discovered deep beneath the Earth's surface. The finding could help explain where Earth's seas come from. Remember, they were wondering, where does the Earth's seas come from? Well, this story was before the comet, and so there again, science disregarding science or beliefs or theories or whatever to push their own agenda and get paid for it. To go to the comet and say, oh, there's going to be water here, and then not finding a bit of it, actually finding some other things that are actually more phenomenal, but they're not going to either don't know or not going to tell you about it. That I do know there's scientists on the Earth that know about what I would look at when I saw what they had there. That this water hidden supposedly is inside a blue rock called ringwoodite. And it lies 700 kilometers underground in the mantle, the layer of rock, hot rock between the Earth's surface and its core. The huge size of the reservoir throws new light on the origin of Earth's water. Some geologists think water arrived in comets as they struck the planet, but the new discovery supports an alternative idea that the oceans gradually oozed out of the interior of the Earth. As I was telling you exactly what goes on in these deep ocean vents and other places as what we call now primary water. It's now being identified as primary water, which they identified as ancient water. What I wanted to point out is this article is even not quite correct either, is it? They didn't discover or get closer to the origin of the water. They just found the sponge it's all attracted and stored in, didn't they? So they found the storage reservoir, not what puts it there. But we will have oozing, and that's partly what's going on. And so that's, where does it go? We might have a rising, if it comes out a little bit quicker sometimes than others, that might raise the sea levels, possibly, if it's coming out that fast. It's all in a natural process. The problem with so-called peak oil is we pull it out faster than Mother Nature can in her chemistry factory where the heat is and the radiation is and all that stuff all working together as a big chemistry factory that it is. We pull it out faster than it can create it. But if we give it time, if we just use it as fast as it's being created, it can't peak. It's just our gluttony that causes the peak. And the more of us using it would cause a peak as well. So it looks like those theories are right. But here it is a week later. Thanks to Gary L. for pulling this out on the Twitter and showing it. It was a report back in June. I remember now after seeing the date, and then we were talking about it or looking at it then. But here it is. I mean, they found rock that has more ocean water, fresh water. It's not old water, folks. It's not ancient. It's new. It's been made all the time. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. And I'm sticking to that stronger than I think the climate change alarmists can happen. And speaking of which, the Pope, he's embracing this religion, this universal religion, to bring all of the religions and all other peoples together underneath a servitude of this harm that man himself causes. I mean, this is such a nonsense story when you think about it. I mean, over and over. I mean, at any rate, I won't even go off on my mind, just flash on so many more things. But here, when we talked about self-government, we talked about having decisions to make and consent. Here's somebody that right after I did the broadcast that came up on available to read. I think it was the next day. Pope embraces false prophets of doom. Why I'm disassociating myself from the Vatican and the Church was a story that came right up. I don't want to get into it too much more. The gentleman has his own belief. He has a system. He has a belief what he was expecting to see and hear. He has his analysis of why in his faith what the Vatican did was not correct, and why he's in Germany, why he's no longer going to pay that special church tax in order to practice his faith and be part of that, known part of that. But more importantly, that the Pope should not have got into really what's essentially an unsupported political condition as a leader of some religious group. And he'll go on and say his own words. I won't say more. The point is he's taking his mind, his self-government, and he's withdrawing from another government and saying, I'm not going to support that no more. What do we say, however, about, when Karen Quinn Tostado brought the little idea together as one little concept we could at least focus on, if not perfect, it was just a place to focus us on, don't buy, don't comply, ask why. What I had been saying for months, a year or so before that, was withdraw from this system, repent, rethink. That's all the word repent, rethink. We're told to do that. We're told to take stock in what's going on. Look around you and rethink your position, and then step out and do better. Either it is to question what you see and challenge it by the question, or just do better, like withdraw. And so here was an example of somebody taking it on themselves, their own responsibility, cutting the tie of perceived authority in a religion that looks like it's gone awry. Apparently, now for him it's gone awry. To me, it never really had a proper place, but that's not up to me to judge at all. That's just when I saw what I believe. It's what he saw, what he believed happened as soon as the church hit this political thing that's not supported. He says, I'm going to take my self-government away from, and I'm not going to ally with this government. Now, he's still going to be a Catholic, but he's not going to believe in that Pope, that leader of that religion. So here we are taking responsibility. Withdraw, rethink. Actually, in this case, he's rethinking, and then he withdraws, right? See, for us in the political side in the United States of America, we just need to withdraw quickly, get out of that, and then rethink about what we're doing so we can re-engage. So we have a little bit different situation because we're being absorbed right now. For him, he had to rethink about it. It's a big deal here for him, and he just decided that's not what this is about, and I'm not going to support it any longer. So, taking responsibility, folks. Don't buy, don't comply. Ask why. He asked why. Why am I still here? He's not, folks. So, to the limit that we also think we're self-government and that we can do things autonomously, and the system we find ourselves in, and why we try to withdraw. And I've been one who stopped using Skype. I did it for a long time, and I just stopped using it. I went over to Jitsi, and I've been hoping lots of people would go and do that, but apparently everybody just wants to say, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm going to stay on Skype. And so I've been kind of amazed at that, and everyone has a reason for why. I don't know. I'm kind of dumbfounded a little bit. And then there's the excuse, well, everybody everywhere is being, subverted. Well, that's not been proven. But so I jumped over to Jitsi, and I've been to Skype once. I wanted to make sure after like a month or so after I just connected up, I looked around, some people did respond to me. I responded to them and said, I'm really not doing this anymore. Microsoft's privacy policy is actually a non-privacy policy. And it says right in here that it's big, and we talked about the silent weapons quiet wars. The big data imposition on top was probably worse than the NSA being involved on all this. But here it is. If you didn't believe me or thought about it and didn't think about it again, I'm going to use this to try and persuade you to get into alternatives. And if we can all come back together on an approved, an agreeable alternative, I'm asking us that we do this. I thought Jitsi was fine. No one said it's not fine. And I don't know why more people aren't doing that, but newly published NSA documents show our agency could grab all Skype traffic. And remember, I told you, the only reason why Microsoft paid so much money, everyone was looking at, this is so much money, you can't buy this thing for this price money. And I told you the reason why they're doing it, because they want the algorithm to hand it to the NSA. They're in bed with them. We knew that way back then. This was not a business proposition from the point of business and sales and profit on a product. This is about getting favor and being internal to a government. So that put my head into the problem of this. And so now if we had any question here, the National Security Agency document published this week by the German news magazine Der Spiegel from the trove provided by the NSA contractor Edward Snowden shows that the agency had full access to voice, video, text messaging, and file sharing from targeted individuals over Microsoft's Skype service. I won't read more. Targeted individuals, okay, so they didn't do mass sweeping. That's fine, so back out and let's look for something else. Let's stop using the excuse that Skype is the only one. We've got to stop this. This is kind of a nonsense. As I said, it's not even about just being there and sticking it in their face. I don't want to give them. I don't want to give them the credit. I don't want to give them anything at all. So that's my decision. And yes, I don't talk with many people, hardly at all, ever. Actually, it seems. Very few in my Jitsi, but go to piss off the NSA on reallibertymedia.com. I think it's at the bottom of every broadcaster page I put on. Ditch Skype, dump Skype and get onto something else. We're on Jitsi. I'm on Jitsi. A few of us are on. I don't know how many else couldn't get in. I've had some problems. I don't know why. I was able to get on it with all the problems I've had. I was surprised that anybody would not persist. So anyway, it's confirmed now. Skype was really picked up to do what it did, as I predicted, as was obvious. I don't know why anybody else would think differently. And so here we are. I need to go on and on. You either choose to, be the excuse to continue in the system and agreeing to it and make them, do whatever they're going to do, or start showing you're voting with your feet, you're voting with your finger clicks, you're voting with whatever you can. I don't look at a lot of websites because I got filters on. And if these people get so much data acquisition, I don't go there. My blocks just shut me out, and it's just so much work to undo all the blocks. If I wanted to see it, I just go find it somewhere else. And I hope after a while everyone starts to do that. These people stop putting big data conditions involved with your websites. And then as we learn more how they integrate, we just disintegrate. Pretty simple. Now, going on, and I wanted to point a situation out here, totally different issue, but in the oil sector, Nebraska Supreme Court rules to allow Keystone XL pipeline. So Nebraska Supreme Court rules to allow Keystone XL pipeline. Now, as I said, now twice and three times again. Wow. This has got an interesting case in one regard. And I think it shows evidence of how people don't do it right, and particularly landowners that are supposed to be protected and are protected at some point by due compensation and due process provisions. And then I throw in on top the obligation of the government to protect against intrusion, and that's kind of a good rap in my mind that most people don't understand to begin with, and they use lawyers and stuff to go fight these cases. But this decision, while it may be viewed as an acceptance of the Keystone, you have to go down into even this story that I have and understand what the Supreme Court decided. It wasn't really on that the Keystone can come over your land in Nebraska or anywhere else. What it was a question on what state authority makes that decision. And so I just wanted to highlight this, and we'll move on quickly, because it's just, if you're not interested, it doesn't matter. If you're not interested in land, it doesn't matter. But if you're interested in land, I want you to take a note of this and look and see whether or not these were landowners that were protecting their land by the Fifth Amendment clause, or whether they got into an administrative process and impliedly allowing a state authority to decide for them. Because this decision was whether one state organization over another ought to have made the decision of the route. Don't forget, that doesn't mean that they may make the route. They may not be able to get the land. They may not be able to get the soil, more importantly, on a disposal of obligation to protect, if you know to assert that. And then one other little thing, you look very carefully whether or not in the process they have declared this pipeline to be a public use and benefit, that they've brought it up statutorily to try to match whatever a landowner would use, how it was granted to him. But I wanted you to understand the deception on this, like I try to point out to y'all, that this was a decision not on the right of the pipeline through Nebraska. It was on what agency was going to decide about that route. And I will argue that, not argue, I will assert that you have property rights, soil disposal to you, that didn't decide your property rights. They can go ahead and rule that this is a path over your land. Doesn't mean they're going to get it. And you better have been, every notice that you got about them trying to encroach, you better have been answering it on your own private assertion of your own property rights, and hopefully got together with a bunch of people to do the same thing for themselves. It's one thing for a state agency to be given authority to make a route, draw a line over a map. It's quite another for them to come and steal your land just because they can make that decision. Okay, I hope you see the distinction. If you can see the distinction here, you start seeing how to parse apart what we see in legal and what really has to happen in law. That we get wrapped up with these attorneys, they stick us right in and destroy our property rights, and we don't have a clue how they did that. And they talk about the landowners here, and I'm just going to tell you that I'm seeing the writing on the wall for the landowner that doesn't assert his property rights and believes this state agency has the right to determine that the route means taking their land. You still have that to defend yourself, your land with, and it's their obligation to protect. You have to know this. You have to figure this out and go, when I give you that path to go down to protect yourself, go find the fact of that. See, it's beyond me. I could talk about it. No one's going to listen to me anyway. You'll hear me. I mean, you'll listen, but I mean, it won't be applicable to you. When you go and read this and you do protect it because the monster's on you coming into your backyard and you decide you are going to protect against it, what I'm telling you makes a whole lot more sense quicker than just having these inert hypothetical issues that I have to bring just to kind of hope I bring something that's interesting to people that they want to grab their hands onto and just yank, again, grab their hand on their part of that rope, on that part, that subject matter, and start tugging until they yank down the edifice of power, which was just this idol, this thing. It's not you, not your government, not your soil. Remember, they give soil to people, men and women, men, not legal entities. There's an interest given to a legal entity. It doesn't have arms and legs, right? I mean, this is how we should be able to figure this out by now. We should be grown up enough to see that. Now, the oil, the tar sands oil and this and that, and I'm not getting into the reason whether it's good or bad. In fact, this judge says it. This is not about the propriety of the rightness or the wrongness of this decision, of this pipeline. It's just saying, we're just here to say which agency has the right to make the route. So, together with that has been some objections of this oil coming down, and we know now coming out of Oklahoma with the fracking, now we get more solutions coming out that they find are radioactive. And so, to me, that's just another source. Remember, without going into it, remember Fukushima? Oh, it's going to get here. Well, the reports are coming again. Oh, Fukushima radiation's here. I said, no, it's not. I'll hold to my guns until they can prove the source absolutely without conjecture. I told you those things, all that water got sucked to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean in all the eddies in that current that goes between Japan and southern California, northern Mexico. Doesn't even come at this way. And I told you all the reasons why I can't come here, talked about it. Well, I want to remind you, in the same problem that we see the oil's coming down and potentially that they have to remove the radioactive components in the oil. Remember, I told you this I'll call it radiologic fusion, it's really a radiologic catalyst, is sitting in the earth already. It's there as the energy source over and above the system energy that brings everything into a resonant state, if you will, a compliant state to be transmuted. I'll use the word. Okay, so, but remember, and it comes out in this week too, as I use these timings to tell us something. Nuclear waste disposal was a little documentary, a lot about Greenpeace. You know, I'm a little bit off, but you know, they went back when they were dumping when the governments were dumping nuclear waste in the oceans. Greenpeace was there. That's more the kind of thing I got into, but I was denied. They didn't want my boat. They didn't want my people. They wanted my money. So that's why I found out then it was also political. However, they did a good job to try and show that the governments were dumping nuclear waste out in the ocean. So when you tell me that Fukushima's out there coming to the United States shore, I told you, wait a minute, that's just a cover for what's already here. It's a cover for what's going to come out at the end down in Houston or whatever. They're going to dump that Keystone, and they're going to be filtering out all those radioactive components, and they'll put it in a waste dump in a can. They'll stick it back in the ocean or whatever they don't get caught at. Okay, but the United States government and all the you see this. I have this link that says they've dumped nuclear waste into the oceans. They show the video. They show all the things, the places they think that they do, and then you look around and you tell me when they're measuring radiation. You tell me how you cannot say that it's not how it's not issuing from there more likely than Fukushima. How these hospitals that issue gases as a normal part of the operation, or maybe not so normal, but as a mistake, as I saw Bessie Davis emit, and we found Ottawa picked it up the very next day. I've reported on all of this stuff, that it's already here. That the story came up, I wanted to remind you, as we see the Fukushima stories coming up, it's coming and it's hitting the West Coast. No, this is, you're probably finding radiation that is either nuclear waste dumps, as well as, remember, it comes out of the rock. Remember that AJ's crew went running out to the coast. I think it might have been Pacifica, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge, and they studied the sand. They actually found some scientists who actually had the machine to go find it out. And what did he find, folks? Exceeding levels of radiation. They proved it. They're all in a fantastic lather over this. And when he went to test it, he found out, it's thorium and radium. It's naturally occurring. It's in the beach itself. No Fukushima, folks. We live in the stuff. Governments allow it. And we've just not known it, not responded to it. Now, not such an easy job to deal with, but this is what the reality is. It's not so hard. You don't need a scientist talking to you about all the stuff, his propaganda, to tell you this stuff. It's nice when the scientist comes out and shows that he's got the tools, the university has the tools, and they use them correctly. Nuclear waste and nuclear poisons are around us, and we've allowed it, and we've allowed it to be here today. We're a part of this. I certainly would rather have seen a different answer, and now that we know, we have to figure out how to solve it. But you're going to realize, and I have plenty of people who are doing this, when you get into hazardous waste and toxic waste mitigation and elimination, governments don't have anything to do with it. You'll find that these people in Europe, they're looking for ways to do this, to deal with this problem. But when you get down into practice, they don't want to have nothing to do with you. You heard that in the Corexit problem with the bioremediation. That was the gentleman had a biological organism that would actually eat that oil up lickety split. And the EPA wouldn't do it because they were making big contracts for BP's auxiliary company for Corexit, which is a poison. It's still in there. It's still coagulated all that oil, and it's not going to get rid of it. There is no profit to be made in curing anything, is there? It's the same method over and over. It's pretty fantastical that we continue to allow this, like pharma-terrorism. Agri-terrorism. It's all to the bottom line. Again, when the government got in the business of being in the business, and you heard Richard Pryor say it's about the business of doing business, you should have believed that a long time ago and said, wait a minute, we got a little bit of a problem here. And as all these things, these forces come out, and I'll move on to something a little bit off a charge, but really in the scheme of things, all the lies that come out that elicit people. You saw what happened. I'm not going to touch it. What happened there in Paris? Please, another script, even went to a kosher grocery store. Who'd have thunk that would have happened? And now we find out about Israel being involved. Well, we're going to send our best commandos there now. Right to a known script, folks. You can't, who would, I wouldn't have thought anything else, would you? Actually? That we are just being played, and we can agree to it or we can get away. And you see how fast all the people ran in France, and they're rallying up in the streets now. And what did I tell you that's for? That's to get the government of France, to get the people to agree to go have the government of France go beat up on some other people. That's I don't know what else to say. And then here we got the Israeli military involved, and I'm going to get to one little thing that someone sent to me on an email. And it's about here in the United States, too, as well as probably globally. I'll extend it now to globally. Something called Law Enforcement Exchange Program. And the mention of JINSA, Jewish Institute of National Security Affairs, is an organizer of these programs. And they'll go all over the world, and they'll teach you how to do this. How to protect yourself against these supposed terrorists. How is, folks, a well-organized military machine, how do you forget your driver's license in a car? Come on. They also mentioned the International Association of Chief of Police here with this discussion, reminding us, the emailer, my friend, reminding us that we can ask for training, but be careful the type of training it is. And I told you on the air, it's not, the training is not going to solve this. And then he points out it's going to be the training that really is the training we don't need. It's really commando training in your local police, and the chiefs of police are involved. And for those of you that didn't notice, if this is not to script, one of the chief investigators of that thing that happened in Paris, whatever that was found dead, shot himself. Right to the script, folks. I mean, this is not too bad. So internationally, we have this wars going on. The United States is just fomenting everywhere, apparently thick with Israeli intent. That kosher grocery store just should have, I don't know why that didn't come up and make a lot more people kind of shake their head. Maybe it did, I just don't see it. But we're pressing hard in this Ukraine issue. It's still happening. We're finding out Monsanto's involved in that. They're trying to take, all of a sudden, Ukraine land is now privatizable when it wasn't before the United States got there. The World Bank is involved with all that. Russia's not, they're on the front line of that. They're not having it. They just voted no GMOs, or labeling actually. Want to see all the GMOs that's in their food. So they're not having this. And I've told you, I said, be careful on this, what's coming down, what the United States is pushing. I just don't know our capability as a nation. These psychopaths in Washington, I just know they're psychopaths and they're criminals. That's all I see coming out of them. And they're stupid. They're stupid as stupid can be. I don't mean idiota. I mean stupid. Can't hold the story together if it's to save their life. And it's not going to be their life. It's going to be yours when they make a mistake. That I wanted you to know that we hear about this jet fighter that the Americans have, that they've been the F-35. And it's a dog. It's not even a dog. It really maybe shouldn't even be flying. But we're going to plan all our protection on this fighter thing. It can't be a fighter. I don't know what it is. It's failing at almost every the design flaws in it are just superb. And yet at the same time, Russia's made their fighter, the Su-30, that I think. When we see this saber rattling, we better be very, very, as I said before, be very, very careful of what we think as Americans, what's going to happen in the future. Their Su-30 aircraft will flat out fly ours, period. And while you're so-called, you as a taxpayer, so-called, you think that, Godzillion ended all that, but I hear crickets on that too, but notwithstanding that. If you think that the American superiority is such that it's a winner, you better look around in history since at least Korea, at least. If you think the technology is actually up to par recently, you better look very carefully when we saber rattle about our capability. And if they're going to be that stupid and push that button, I'm hoping they have some secret stuff that they really can outdo this. I hope this whole plunder that they're causing on you to pay for this jet that don't actually do. It's marvelous technology, but it just don't work for its trick. They better have something up their sleeve, and they're just drawing everybody out, because this thing is going to be suicide. And you really need to think about that. These idiots that are sitting, like I said, they're not sending me a red phone email explaining to me, here, you have to shut up about this, but this is what we're doing. That email hasn't come to put me to rest, that they know what they're doing. And when I see stories about the capacities of these aircraft that are coming also from China now, they're actually already on the, this is supposed to be secret technology that they have, the United States, and new lasers. Well, China has also got theirs coming. A mutually assured destruction comes to mind, and it's not nuclear. That I think we better be very careful. But moving on. Policing is a dirty job, but nobody's got to do it. 6 ideas for a cop-free world. Thought it was an interesting exploration into the idea that we don't need cops. And we found out that we don't need cops in quite a few instances. I've reported behind them. When the cops go away, no one notices. Or actually, as we found in Acapulco, traffic improved when the traffic cops struck for higher wages. Remember, then the Metro cops followed suit right after that, and nobody noticed that they were off the street. So we can do this ourselves, and this is what I'm asking you to reconsider. It's going to be us to consider this. So this is on a Rolling Stone paper. I don't necessarily agree with the options, but it gets us to think. It gets us to lower that shield that we've placed up in front of the authority that oppresses us, to say, wait a minute, we don't need that shield we don't have to hold up your shield against us. That's not working. That I wanted to put this in the broadcaster so you can just read it. Think about it. We're going to need people to think ourselves into the better place. For me, I can only do so much. For you, you can only do so much. And for someone else, they can only do so much. If each one of us can take a task that's normal to our skill set, as we honestly appraise that, and apply it. I do think this is doable. I hate that term, but there it is. I used it. Again, doing. And it's because we have a silence about the doing. The apathy of the doing, as I keep telling us over and over, that it's just when we don't do this insanity takes us over. And I'd rather see that it's not us. I'd rather see that that's not for us. It's better. I'd rather not see a bunch of people in France stepping out and hitting, railing against this, whatever it was. It may have been real. I don't know. But see, that's not the point. This happened for a reason. And it wasn't what everyone's looking at. It's to get people conducive to go beat on more people. I don't understand that. And I don't understand why people haven't really seen that. So to me, I'm kind of mind-boggled. I don't have a point here. I mean, I don't know where to begin and where to end with some of this stuff. So that's a failing, and I don't have that much thought to put to it. Where am I going to go with that? So I do have something I can do. I can remember what property law and the soil disposal law is. I can remember the hierarchy and clarity and peace it brought, and I can say, well, that's the peace I want for everybody, and if we just knew these things, I'll just be the reservoir for that memory, and I'll try to give that to everybody else, and the techniques I learned to get that back and what it takes to get back, I'll be that reservoir. I'll be that that advocate. For that part, I can't do more of this. I can just point out all the nonsense and hope someone else sees it and starts the more of the reality and truth about that as well. So it ends up becoming communicating to the human condition, isn't it? And like I said, I'm not so good at that at some point. I am not a charismatic, apparently. I certainly do not have many people listening as I used to, and that's that's a small pool, and I hope it keeps rippling out. That's all I can hope. I hope this is the core pool, if you will. This is the core group that does become more of an influence in your daily actions. You adopt some of the things that I've said and apply them in the way they need to be applied and persist in the way they need to be persisted, and you prevail in the place that you need to prevail, and really all to show an example that it is better where we went, and there was an example on how you did that, and we can do more if we just started to do that. And don't walk into this issue thinking that you're not in a war, because there's a war for everybody's consent. I can just say that, whether it's good for them or not. And we have these tyrants that are in office. I'm noticing we're in the county that I'm in, and we have a bunch of petty tyrants in office. And what do you do with that? As one of the sheriff, I can't remember his name now, the gun sheriff said. I'm sorry, I apologize for not remembering his name. It just hasn't come into my mind. Dave Mack, maybe. Anyway, he said, so the question was asked, well, what happens if you have a bad sheriff? And then he said, you're going to be in some trouble. So this is what we have. You get good people in office, and you might have a chance. If you have bad people in office, then it's really no holds barred at some level. And so that's a whole other type of people need to step into the offices, understand the pressure they're going to be under, understand the propaganda they're going to be fed, understand the fear campaign that's going to be put on them for making bad decisions. They're going to have the objective basis to repel all that bad juju on them in the office and do right. It's going to take people to do that. So this is for those that can do that. But there's some in the offices that are no good. And this is an interesting little story that people responded to, which is kind of a neat chuckle for the internet, the power of the internet. This post shamelessly uses Frederick County, Maryland Council member Kirby DeLauder's name without authorization. Update, added link to DeLauder apology. This guy was a council member who threatened a local journalist, Bethany Rogers, for using his name without her permission in a newspaper article. Well, he's a public officer, and this for journalist is using his name in a public publication. And so this starts out. This shows you the mentality of people. This shows that they're absolutely absent the line what the law is about this. It actually shows the arrogance that you're dealing with. That if you don't displace it, or you don't step up to counter it, like what she ends up doing in her way, and then other people come in to say, yeah, you're being a real idiot. Where he comes to the point where he has to apologize, and I haven't even read what that is. I don't really care. The point is that this is how bad it's getting, because we are not being vigilant up front. We're not going down to our county meetings. We're not doing, and believe me, I've done it for months and years, folks. I mean, I've been there and I've done that kind of thing. I pressed a position. I told them I found the law, the federal law and the state law that said that property taxes, where they demand a particular type of coin and currency, that's a phrase, particular type of coin and currency, for a payment of taxes is a crime. It's a federal crime. And it took 6 months, or 3 months, it was about 3 months before they didn't want to listen to that at all. So we got our little private public meeting. They asked me to come in the back, and so I had a whole bunch of people wanted to hear the answer to that. Like, how are they going to continue to demand a particular type of coin of currency in the payment of property taxes and not be criminals? And we went to our meeting. It took a long time to get that meeting, and I made my presentation. I persisted as far as I could up until the point they said, we're going to have to get a law professor to answer that. I said, no, you don't. You just admitted you're going to breach your fiduciary duty to uphold the law because the law says this. The law professor is not going to tell you anything that overcomes your duty, the oath you took to your duty. And I said, so I'd like to know you have time to think about it. Give me a writing on how this county's going to come into compliance, that stop charging and figure out some alternative, to stop demanding a particular type of coin of currency contrary to the laws of the United States. Well, then the persistence went so far as I had to stop doing that after about 6 months. Never got my answer. Got a lot of promises, but nothing happened. So, in a way, I kind of dropped the ball. But there's tons of stuff out there that if you persisted. And I was just learning about that process. I thought you had to be cordial. I didn't realize you could actually just go after him for fiduciary breach and a crime. I wasn't into it anyway. I mean, it's like in your own town, you don't want to be attacking your brothers and sisters in a way. If you look at it that way, it's your big family. You'd rather just have them do better. So you make your decisions. But, I mean, there's a lot here to step up. Step into your county meetings, and stop the nonsense against you locally. For those of you it doesn't take many. It takes just a handful to do this, actually. So this guy spouts off, and he gets put back in his place. This is a problem. If he'll do it for his name, believe me, they're doing it in things that you don't even know. Absolutely. And it requires that you integrate somehow. I don't like it, but it requires that you do that anyway. I don't think anybody likes war either, and they still have to fight them, I suspect. Now, moving on into more things that we have to fight and being careful, I wanted you to know something. Stronger, more toxic Gardasil vaccine approved by the FDA. Will more girls suffer and die? I guess upon the question, we can wait and see. The FDA approved Gardasil 9. Is this malfeasance or stupidity was the question. Malfeasance is when a public official violates a public trust by performing an act that is wrongful, legally unjustifiable, or contrary to law. Nonfeasance is the failure to act where there is a duty to act, and misfeasance is conduct that is lawful but inappropriate. Perhaps when it comes to the recent approval of Gardasil 9, all of these apply. So now you have interesting, I like the way they started that. They tell you the standards. We've actually used this in our lawsuit, malfeasance, nonfeasance, and misfeasance, in different capacities of something. You have to just look at what they're supposed to do or not, or if they don't act where they had. You call them each one, and you call them out for a fiduciary breach. And it's really simple. It's not that hard. But so they're bringing all of them out on the duty an official has, and they're asking whether or not what they've done here is any of that. But my only thing is, looking at this as an administrative agency, they're going to hide underneath their authority, and they're going to use their willful ignorance about how giving over the bottom line corporations, giving them the ability to have a say without any more input. Without any real objective basis, they're going to use that as their shield, as the government shield, that you have to figure out a way to break through. And if you don't, this is just Gardasil. Maybe you don't care about that. This is just FDA. This is how it works. You either agree that this is not right, and it's a wrong that you want it, you need to write because it makes sense to you to be able to write it, and you do that, or it continues to come down on us. And one of the problems is we found, and I predicted here about the pig's fly flu, it was going to be incorporated. Another other multivalent flu problem. I said it was going to be incorporated when no one took it, and that's what happened. That's what they start doing with all this. And then your babies are being injected with all this nonsense. Finally, the truth emerges about whooping cough vaccine. OBs and pediatricians, stand back with your needles, is what it's saying here. There's a big fail. Just this week, the New York Times published an article stating the problem of surging whooping cough cases has more to do with flaws in the current vaccines than with parents' resistance. So, again, more stories about this problem. The whooping cough kids, the ones that didn't want to get injected, were being blamed for the herd for getting the whooping cough. Well, obviously, it's the ones that weren't getting it and didn't have it couldn't be the transmitters of it, right? So this is the stupidity behind this. No one steps up and says, wait a minute, stop that nonsense. And joins them to do to stop that, to do this. And so it's coming out now that whooping cough was not caused by people who resisted the infection, the vaccine, but the ones that were actually getting it. And herd immunity is a fraud, a fraudulent imposition, a fraudulent theory. And in fact, you're getting injected with the thing, and you get it, and you respond, and some people aren't up to it, so they then become the purveyors. And their vaccine doesn't work, otherwise it wouldn't be a problem in reinfection, would it? So we got proof right here, natural logic. Me being an idiota can see clearly what these stupid people don't quite get, and they do it for a reason. There's an agenda behind it. So, again, you could disregard this and turn around and do nothing, or you could choose ye this day whom you're going to follow and who you're going to do, whether you're going to follow at all. This is what the truism. Every day is a choice on this, and this is why, again, I've just kind of chosen. I wasn't going to tolerate it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do against it. It doesn't matter. It's not even part of the equation. I'm just going to do against it, whatever it is. And then each one of us makes that decision. New law blocks anti-GMO scientists from advising EPA. If you didn't understand more about the EPA accepting false, scienceology more than science, and they come underneath this sustainable development that we've sued to enjoin, and we said, you can't use this religion to underpin and be as a foundation for any of this stuff. A new law will place restrictions on scientists with clear knowledges of GMO dangers and create a room for experts with the overt financial ties to biotech and pharmaceutical industries affected by the EPA regulations. And the EPA has used this sustainable development principle of best science is available, and they accept this best fraudulent science as the best available. I've explained this over and over. So again, we can just disregard this, but this is what's happening in a pretty formidable organization. I told you this EPA is where all the money for grants for the Solutions Network comes up, which we sued to enjoin indirectly as an agency of the governor. So we're on this. It's just a matter of we're also up against the seats of decision that would want this harm against you. And so our matter keeps and continues as we persist and continue to expose, if we have to, all these officials that are non-miss and malfeasance, as we heard in the other discussion. So this is not unknown. This language is not unknown. It's just a matter of starting to use it, and these are the tools that we find against it, to find and be an example of the exposure that needs to come while we get people to start understanding it's real. It's not no theory here. We're not using theories here, whether it's in conspiracy or not. That again, John Rappaport, I think he fires on all cylinders a ton of times. Some of the things that he talks about more and more ongoing. He hit the Maui lawsuit. He continues to make reports on that. Once I see that, I don't really follow that condition. I make an analysis and I move on. I don't want to get lost in all that while I'm focusing on something else. See, that's one of the other problems. But he's on point. Somebody you want to keep following if you can. He's on. I think he's on Twitter too. I think I follow him. John Rappaport. But he talks about the medical shadow government. Over the last 50 years, tireless researchers have uncovered and revealed the existence of various elites that control governments and populations, banks, super banks, the military-industrial complex, intelligence agencies, PSYOP propagandists, Wall Street, and so on and so forth. and on and on, and we could talk about all this, but here's the point. We have a lot of people that are doing a lot of research, and nobody applies it. I hear lots of people that can outline the crime against them, fact for fact, developing a cause, and expressing the harm in 3 minutes and before a county commissioner who's doing them harm, and they will not take the next step to act in defense of themselves in the courts. And this is where we're failing. The system has made it that unfamiliar and that scary that we don't want to engage where we need to engage. I've even reduced it down to, well, then let's make this a small claims case. Go down and find a good small claims form, understand what they're telling you, make a nice simple case, lay it out, sue these people privately. Learn how to get them out of their office when they weren't in the law and they were violating a property interest in you. You sue to restore your property. The property of your good name might be one. I don't know. It's up to you. But you go to small claims court. It costs you, what, $50? If you don't have money, do a form of pauper or whatever, the waiver of fees. You think that they're going to get tired if you keep suing right? And don't do them wrong. You better not sue them wrong. But you sue them right? You think they're going to continue that nonsense? I'm not so sure. And if you're in righteously there, if you have the right cause, they can't never actually come against you. Then you get the one who makes that claim to be defaming you, or slandering you, or mischaracterizing you under color of authority. That's a felony. You sue them. A small claims case. Small claims is just the amount of money. Your cause may be more important in value. You don't sue for the value, you just sue for the purpose. Yes, you're walking to the seat of decision, but you get to, boy, you know that makes the local news, don't it? And you get to have some airtime, don't you? And if your game is together and you got a word in your mouth, you start educating people by that. This is what I'm advocating when we do. New law blocks anti-GMO scientists from advising EPA. That alone, you can take that and say, listen, here's the new rule. They're not going to allow science. You can enjoin that rule. It's that simple. You just have to have that word in your mouth. And I told you before the pig fly flu being joined with the regular influenza. That happened, and they went to 2, and then now they're 4. And here, and then each one of those now we can give an immunity. Again, I will direct you to Clint Richardson's video, Lethal Injection. The first 20 minutes is dry as dry can be. It's only the black and white. I exposed to him after he put it together. I said, here's the law that you're speaking about. It gives them the ability to do this to people. It gives them the ability to enforce it. And if you don't have a better clue in your head about it, and it gives them the power of the government to give immunity to the people that poison us. It's coming, folks. We talk about, even though as much as we found it to be a joke, and where did it go? It's actually happening here that Ebola vaccine gets legal immunity. Remember, they were just doing tests here. They were getting volunteers. Where I talked about all that. It's already legal immunity. Now, do you want a company you want to take the product of a company given legal immunity? The immunity is over some harm done to you that the government of the United States, in other words, the people so-called, are going to underwrite for harming people. This is a license to hurt people or kill them. As long as you get paid. If you don't think you're a human resource work unit that has a certain value, and that's what insurance is about. They'll give you, what, $10,000 for your eye? That's all that is. It's just the parts of a machine. And if you lose it, that's all you get. So Ebola has the vaccine that doesn't exist. It's already got immunity. If you don't think this is in the can, if you shut up, it happens. And you say, well, I'm just not going to get the vaccine. Well, maybe for you. But what about the rest of the people that don't know? And then they come along and they grab you and they jab you. Now what? And you better hope that your body is able to deal with it, is all I can tell you. But as I'm trying to show you, you have a better thing you can say. You have a word in your mouth that you can relate to a black and white that shows that they don't have the authority. As we went through that bill, I can't remember now, that shows if you know what you're talking about and you know the limit of their authority and you know the exception, in other words, that all these things look like influenza, if they are, that's the exception, and you deny that it's anything more than influenza, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it is now. You may not get that jab. So if you don't have that word in your mouth, you're going to get the jab. So money's in the pocket here. The governments, the corporations are in the pocket. It's about the bottom line. You look Clint Richardson's broadcast documentary about the CAFR. Same thing. That's what he explains about that. So lethal injection for the vaccinations and all this crime that the government can do against you. The first 20 minutes is actually Title 50. He reads right out of it. It's real dry, but it'll set you up for showing you how the crime that the criminal state you actually exist in, that no one says anything about. That these corporations are doing the proxy votes by the government. It's about the bottom line, period. And so a lot of this is going to be very difficult, but it's not impossible to stop. Such things as Monsanto's Roundup and other glyphosate-based herbicides directly linked to chronic disease spike. I won't even read it. I've got so much I could read about it. These stories are over and over. You just need to know about them. These are the tools you use to come in and say, stop this nonsense. And don't stop until they stop this nonsense. Another Rappaport story. Monsanto, science and fraud are the same thing. I'm just going to read the title. I mean, I can go on. I could read it to you for yourself, but this is the fact of the point. He's on the point. And here, we proved it. Jefferson Mining District, we were in coordination, sent a coordination letter exposing that the science, through an EPA that was gotten through a FOIA, about the communications about the sage grouse studies and the science behind it amongst the scientists, all would not sign on because they would not agree it was science, that it turns out that they're using that as science, that fraud as science. The agency is, that we called it out. We have the proof. We just supplied it. Science and fraud are the same thing right now. This is a simple win for us if we would just engage it. And so Jefferson Mine District does coordination to stop these new rules and new plans with these things now. It's not so hard, that actually. We just need bodies to throw at it, and it's just wherever you are. And to show the problem, as I told you about the labeling before, we're kind of moving on pretty quick. I want to get over through some tabs here as we're rolling down that have been here forever. That's really just news, quick news and notice to you about all the places that are the problems and stuff that if you be careful about what you ask for, you might get it. Confusion greets the new EU food labeling rules. All I wanted to point out to there is even when you think that labeling was a good thing, it's going to be all confused. Why? Because it's made for that. And there's an interesting ways that they're confusing. And who it impacts. It's not going to be a big industry. It impacts the restaurants, the bakeries, the delis, the grocery stores, and among others, who have to have labels on. And then you have this incongruity within the labeling provision. This is notice to us of how wrong it's going to go where you do labeling like this style, instead of just banning this stuff. You want to use the precautionary principle? Food, not feed. Well, feed too, because if you just do feed, then you're hurting your animals, as we found out in so many studies. But at least for food, let's ban it for food to start. Let's put the precautionary principle on our food, at least. So in other words, what that does is says that the burden's on the one asserting that it's good to prove that it is. And contrary views actually have standing to say, no, that may not have been right. And it stands a little bit harder in our food. They want to put that on everything else but food, it seems interesting, or your pharma, or your other big death industries. I find that just fascinating, and I hear crickets. It's easy to see, easy to prove. Bayer herbicide causes autism even at trace levels, another GMO problem. In other words, remember, GMOs are actually for chemical sales. Don't lose that. Bayer's Liberty-linked GMO crops made to withstand glyphosate, ammonium, GLA herbicide are linked directly to autism-like symptoms according to a new study. Even in low doses, both pre- and postnatal exposure to GLA cause symptoms in laboratory mice. Now, it's mice, may not be people. Maybe a baby has a better immune system, but it's still building, isn't it? So I don't think so. Do you want to take the chance? And then we find out what they do, how they process wheat. They actually spray glyphosate, not this stuff, but glyphosate from Monsanto, all over these things right before they cut them to weaken the stalk so that harvest's easier. And so there's a residue on your wheat that then gets put into all this product that we say the confusion over labeling. They get the residue. They have to now label for it. What a logistical nightmare over just ban this stuff. And then this all ties in when you find out, and I hope I was able to do this now. All that I'm trying, I just wanted to lead right up to this, where you got the license. I bring up Clint Richardson, shows you, as I showed him, And he put in the first 20 minutes, Title 50, he explains how all this stuff can be done to you, supposedly legally, not lawfully. There's no ethical reason for it, but they're going to do it legally for finance. So it's a financial construct. Remember, Title 50 is underpinned by the amendment. Go look at it. Title 12, 95A. That's the financial construct, as I pointed out to him. That this is about the bottom line, always. And when they do this, it's about all these things about the health is about bottom line. Let me now run you on up after all these other things that are just these crimes against people. Let's remind you about Obamacare. See, this is what the bottom line on the care is going to be. You are constrained to what all this is allowed. If you haven't tied it together that way. And then we get this little notice: court packed with the Democrats rule with Obama on Obamacare. Think about this political agenda here. No, I'm not. Listen, the Republicans are not out of it. They're all the same. So we suit them both. So it doesn't. They're both parties. They're both criminals. It doesn't matter to me. I do not favor one or the other. But Democracy Alliance backed effort to stock D.C. Circuit with a Democratic appointed judges pays off. This is again harkens back to the Roosevelt days when he was packing the court, and what you see becomes the change in 1938, Erie versus Tompkins. They declare no federal common law. They then subsequently changed the equity rule, the rules of court to combine the admiralty and equity rules and drop common law from the rule set. But you know it's not gone, but you have to know how to invoke it. And now we're living under federal courts that actually, and they had a problem. There was a big deal about it. It's ongoing. You really couldn't join admiralty and equity. There's major problems with doing it. So they have these weird rules that kind of pop up, and you'll notice they talk about the former equity rules, where they conjoined after they packed the courts. They literally changed your court system to be conducive to the new condition. So it's right there for us to see. But here's Obamacare, the packed courts, and this is going to be under appeal. I won't read too much more, except that this is your future as agreed to and forced through an economic construct through Title 50. Now, I don't know what that means to you all, but not many's going to escape this, okay? So if you have little ones, you better step up to help them before they get here. The path of perdition, the slippery slope is being constructed into the stinking abyss as we speak. Has been, and we're all going to be has-beens. It's just been going on and on and on, and we watch crickets. I just am just stunned. At one level, I don't know why, but at another level, I'm completely stunned. I expected more out of us people to be the Americans that we kept being told that we are, that maybe we're not. Maybe I'm one of the few that care, and I'm really wrong to do that, because we are just that fallen and that duped, that stupid, don't understand when it's right to call yourself an idiota, and when it is to stand up in your own self-governing capacity, and to throw off all others that come against you. Wow, easy that is, I don't have to work hard on that. Crickets! We don't even do that much. We'd rather, crickets. We accept it. There's nothing to see here. We're just going to sing our fiddles, little feet fiddles. Nothing to do. Making noise, having a quiet time. Nothing to respond to. And we're being poisoned. And the spray's coming. And we do nothing. Fascinating. Just impressive to me at one level. I hope for better. I hope we can, I believe we can do better. I see how fast it works when we just step up. We can choose not to, but I'd rather have a better day. I'd rather, as they say, leave this place a little better place than when I got here. And boy, I got to do that. I can just tell you I've got a long path to go yet. I hope I have a little longer to last. A lot longer than Grimner, who just predicted he ain't going to be around here. But that's okay. I think we've talked him out of it, I hope. That'd be again, just another example. Examples are going to be being lost from here on out easily. And so if you young'uns don't get the memory, it's going to go where your memory fails you. It's really that simple. It really is. So anyway, thank you today for tuning in. I hope you got some information that you can use. I listened to the first hour about the Idiota, when it's right, when it's wrong. Be careful how you use it, the power behind it, why you do it right now in this time, in these interesting times we live in, and empower yourself, as I've been trying to do behind the Woodshed. Give us the principles that we've lost. We just didn't see them. That I happened to cross. I hope that I've happened to cross. What I'm telling you as a hope is that they're right, and they seem to work. So I just want to see them continue in other people. So, and I think that we see that it works when we get a few more working and a few more. So, thank you to all the networks that carry the signal. I do appreciate that. Those of you listening on those networks, please support them. I'm sure that a lot of dedication goes on to keep our work.